Commissioner, honored to have you on the show today. Thank you so much, first of all. Aaron Rodgers, let's start off with him. Sorry to bring this bad news to you. Aaron Rodgers, first game as a New York Jet the other night. He gets hurt. Your reaction in terms of what you saw and how you feel as the commissioner of the league, what that did to the league, having somebody of his magnitude get injured on opening day?
Well, we all know that that's part of the game. It's part of life. But, it's heartbreaking because you know how much enthusiasm, excitement he brought to this community, to the Jets fans. But I'm a big believer in the Jets team. I feel bad for Aaron. I think it's terrible. He's a wonderful guy and has meant a great deal to this league. And you want to see him perform. But I'm a believer in the Jets. They got a good football team. And I think they're going to be fighters. And so you saw it the rest of the night. They came on and they played hard. So we're excited about the Jets season this year.
The football players, former football players that have blessed this network for years, and a guy like Shannon Sharp was here the other day talking about this. It was a three-step drop, and he was supposed to get rid of the football, but he didn't, et cetera, et cetera. But you also have other people talking about how that AstroTurf, and that may have played a role. You hear players talking about that more and more and more. Is there legitimate concern from your vantage point that the players may have as it pertains to playing on AstroTurf instead of grass in this day and age?
Well, Stephen, that's one of the things that we really focus on, player safety in general. But, turf is a big part of that. And so when you look at the turf, you also got to look at the cleats. And there are a lot of factors. It's a complex issue. And it's one of the things we negotiated with a collective bargaining agreement to address this in a way that is done scientifically. So we are getting the right people. We have engineers to look at that. We'll look at the mechanism of injury on Aaron's injury and see what may have caused that. But unfortunately, we had two ACL injuries, and one was on grass and one was on the turf. By the way, a new turf that was just put in because there were some concerns about the slit turf. That's been changed out at the Meadowlands. So from our standpoint, that's something we'll look at. We'll look deeply at it. You always want to try to get the best surfaces. FIFA will be in here. I'm meeting with the head of FIFA next week. They'll be playing World Cup. They will not be putting grass in. They'll be putting in a mixed grass with artificial surface. Something that we're working to try to see, is that a better surface for us? Because you got to look at climate too, Stephen. This isn't just about, is a field going to be good in September? Is it also going to be good in December and January?
Yeah, I'm wondering though, but I mean, again, we could think about cost, we could think about safety, but I'm wondering if the players themselves gave the impression that they would rather play on grass as opposed to artificial turf, what would be the NFL's response to an assertion like that? If they said that to you guys, what would you say?
Well, they have said that in many cases, but you also have other players who like playing on a turf field because it's faster.
That's true.
So you've got a mixed opinions. What we want to go is on science. We want to go on what's the best from an injury standpoint to prevent the injuries, to give our players the best possible surface to play on. And that can't be done by my feeling of looking at a particular injury. It's got to be done with a real process and to look at it with medical experts, look at it with engineers, look at it with people on the cleats, look at it on every aspect of what can go into that injury, including the training and where a particular player is at any given time. So all those factors go into play, and that's where we make decisions on the basis of science, not because I see an injury that I don't like. Ultimately, I want our experts to come back and give it to us. And that's why we've engaged with this process and actually accelerated the process with the NFLPA to be able to get that kind of data so we can make those kind of decisions. And it's not my data, it's not our data, it's collectively the NFL and NFLPA. We all are doing the same work with the same team.
You brought up the NFLPA. They've got a new executive director there, Lloyd Howell, and obviously succeeding DeMaurice Smith that was at the helm. I believe it was the previous 14 years. How would you classify that relationship between you two thus far and the NFL's relationship with the Players Association, not just on this issue, but on a bevy of issues that you obviously have to tackle? How would you classify that relationship right now with you guys?
Yeah, I got to meet Lloyd probably a month and a half ago, shortly after he was appointed. And we've continued to be in contact. We were at the kickoff game together. I spoke to him actually Monday and actually was texting with him last night. So Listen, this is a relationship that we have to do what's best for the game ultimately. The players, the game, and I think he's got a really incredible perspective. He's very smart, very engaged. He's out talking to his players, and he's talking to some of our club officials when he goes there. And I think that's really important for him to get that perspective. But we also recognize, listen, it's important to address issues now. Let's not wait until the end of a collective bargaining agreement. Turf issues, if they should be accelerated, let's get to it.
Right.
If there are other issues, let's get to it. Let's find solutions and let's make the game better.
Let's touch on the issue of concussions for a second, because I did some research. NFL, you guys announced 149 concussions in the year 2022, up 18% from 2021 and 14% higher than a 3-year average from 2018 to 2020. Why do you think that's the case? How much of a concern is it today compared to what it was 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago?
Well, you failed to mention the 2 years prior to that was 25% reductions.
Yes.
So just to be clear, so what I think affects that in a lot of ways are last year, as you know, particularly around the Tua, we reevaluated some of our procedures with the Players Association. We changed and modified some of those with our chief medical officer and their chief medical officer. And our doctors are looking at that, and we made a policy change. They're evaluating more players now. I think they're also, and I think this is a good thing long term, I think more conservative in their approach. And so you're going to get more evaluations. As such, you'll likely get more concussions. So I think you have to look behind the numbers ultimately. What we're trying to do is take head contact out entirely in some fashions. And so the Guardian cap, as an example, has been a really important change for us because in the preseason, we've expanded that to more players. That is shown to reduce the impact of head contacts.
Okay.
And that's been very effective. It's actually reduced concussions by 50%. And so there are concepts, there are some colleges and high schools that are thinking about using that during the regular season. I think our helmet manufacturers is something else where we really focus on, is they might be able to incorporate some of those elements in the helmet itself as opposed to an attachment to the helmet, which I think could be a positive. But advancements in that where we're developing and adding research and looking at ways to make our helmets better. We have 2 helmets now that are position specific for quarterbacks and linemen, 2 different helmets, because there are areas where not all concussions are alike, they are not caused the same way. Can we add extra padding in certain areas? So those are areas that are really important, along with the rules and obviously the medical care itself.
I'm interested in knowing how what kind of action, if any at all, the National Football League has taken since last year. I remember, and I keep bringing this up, so I owe it to you to bring this up right in your presence here. Tua Tagovailoa is in a game last year against the Buffalo Bills in Miami. He gets up, he's clearly wobbled, he doesn't look like himself at all, yet he's allowed to continue that game. The Dolphins had said they followed all, proper protocol and procedures. He's on the field again that Thursday night, and that's when it really, really got bad, and he ultimately was carried off the field in Cincinnati. He ends the season. He comes back a few weeks later, ends the season concussed again. This time, he played through a game, and they didn't discover there's a concussion until that following Monday, if I remember correctly. I want to know what level of concern, if any at all, did the NFL have when they saw that and when they took that whole Tua Tagovailoa situation into consideration as they thought about the issues of concussions moving forward?
Yeah, and they're always, whenever you have an injury, particularly an injury, a concussion injury, or any injury that involves the spinal cord, all of those issues are a very significant attention. And as I mentioned to you, we changed those protocols last fall, shortly after Tua's first injury.
Okay.
And again, to address that on a more conservative basis, to allow our doctors more freedom. I don't make those decisions ultimately as far as injuries. We have incredible medical professionals on the field. We saw that play out over the season, including with DeMar Hamlin. Our medical professionals are the best in the world, and the care that they give our players are the best in the world. But we always want to try to get better. And if we can see things that we can improve in those protocols, we'll do it, and we'll do it immediately to make sure that those circumstances, our players, if they are injured, they get that attention immediately. We need the players, obviously, to raise their hand. And the culture has changed on that, Stephen. When we first started this 15 years ago, a lot of people said they're not going to tell you when they're injured.
Right.
They are. Their teammates are. Their coaches are. The medical professionals are making those decisions independently from any input from anyone else and doing it in the best interest of the player. And they're independent experts down there. They're not just team doctors. So an independent doctor is helping make that
Explain
decision.
to the audience how you know definitively that doctors, team doctors, or the medical professionals are making these decisions independent of the team and influence from the team. Because you got a lot of cynics out there that look at the National Football League and they say, yeah, they say that, but we can't believe. We find that very, very hard to believe. Like, again, bringing up Tua. The team elected to put him back into the game in the eyes of the common viewer. They're looking at it and they're saying, wait a minute, he doesn't look steady, but he's back in that game. It's hard to believe that the team had nothing to do with that decision. How do you assure the viewing public that that indeed is the case, that the team didn't make that decision? The medical professionals were actually ones who did.
Well, probably the most important thing is adding the unaffiliated neurocognitive doctor, that he is part of that decision. He ultimately makes that decision. So he has nothing to do with the team. He doesn't report to the team. He has no contact with the team. He ultimately is part of that evaluation, and he or she makes that determination. And so that decision has been, we've been focusing on this in the change in culture. Medical decisions are made by the medical professionals, not coaches, not other personnel. So we have the best personnel in the medical area. They're charged with making those decisions on the basis of medical factors that they see, not anyone else.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming, sports, and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.